touch is information. It tells you that you're being supported. It tells you that you are connected. It tells you that you're safe. It tells you that you're loved by the tribe. Yeah, so this book, White Fragility, I started today. It just gets into the deep fabric of racial inequality that exists in the United States. And one of the things that I found interesting, because I like most everybody that I know was like, I'm not racist. And it's like, you probably haven't looked deep enough, because it's it's like saying I'm not Christian. It's like, no, it's in the culture. Yeah. And so when you're growing up, if you don't see that, it's probably that you just haven't examined it, which is understandable. But they call it like color blindness. It was at one point there was this move to become colorblind because that was more socially acceptable, but it didn't necessarily cure the inherent issue. It just kind of made it more socially acceptable. And so I'm uncovering these new layers myself of like, oh yeah, like now I'm noticing race because I can't not notice race. I'm like,
do you feel bad about it for noticing race?
Yeah, but I understand that that's bullshit. But I'm witnessing that in myself. Yeah, okay. So I'm walking down the street and I'm like, black person, Asian person, white person, like Vietnamese, like I see all the things. It's everywhere. Yeah. So it's an interesting time.
What's the premise? What's the premise of White Fragility?
I've only gotten maybe a quarter through the book, but I think essentially it's that's my guess would be that superficial veil of I'm not racist is, if you pull the curtain back enough, you're like, oh man. And so the analogy that that's come up with me with it is that, at one point, just complete racism was like, that was socially acceptable. So it could be in your front yard, no problem. You could have a lynching, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, that's not okay. 1865, 13th Amendment. It's like, well, there's this one piece that it's still okay to have slavery as long as it's a criminal. So now we can take them out, take away their rights. They can't vote, and then they have to work for us and all that. So we can kind of redistribute this and reposition it. So it's not in the front yard, but it's in the attic or the closet or under the bed, and that's what I'm starting to see. And I'm just in process. I don't know what I'm seeing. And that's where it gets strange, because I think that a lot of people don't know exactly what they're seeing, but they're feeling this social pressure because of cancel culture, which is like a word that I'm just learning in the last 2 weeks. Yeah. It's becoming very prevalent. So now there's this weird other force that's coming through of, I think, fear of being a racist. So like, okay, I need to post a meme and I got to like put this stuff up. And there's a lot of different forces that I think they're all coalescing right now.
Did you put up a black tile on Tuesday?
No. But that was because I didn't know it was happening. I was like disengaged.
Would you have if you knew?
It would depend. No, I wouldn't have put a black tile up. No. I wouldn't have done that. I would have put something of some degree of support, but it wouldn't have been. I've put essentially 3 posts now that were some degree of like my thoughts. Yeah. But it was after the first one, so I didn't even realize that it was happening because I was up in Oregon at the time and I was like working on a house and painting and moving rocks.
Yeah, I noticed that. You're like digging something up.
I was digging some shit up. Yeah, exactly. And then like I had somebody subleasing my apartment in Santa Monica and they're like telling me, how stuff's so crazy. I was like, what are you talking about? It was like 2 or 3 days after the thing. And then I was getting this pressure from people to have an opinion. And I'm like, okay, I'll drum up an opinion, I guess. Which that's, I think, the fatal error on my part, where I'm like, I think stepping back in that situation for me, I don't think that silence would be violence. I think silence would be introspection, and investigation of like, how do I actually feel about this?
So how about that? I mean, there you were, perhaps, and by the way, you and Craig Ballantyne, Craig.
Yeah.
Similar positions. Like he was like, dude, I was just like silent in introspection, in gathering data, trying to understand it. I'm a Canadian. I didn't have slaves. None of my ancestors did that I know of. And people pressured him enough where like, well, tell us what you think now, like what you're. Yeah. And I don't think anyone would be like, well, fuck it, I'm a racist. Like no one's gonna come out and be like, and there you go, I'm a. It's but we're in such a fucked up time that someone's going to pressure you, and you're like, all right, so this is what I think. And then as you told me, you're like, I feel somewhere between 50 and 75% of the people were like, fuck you. And
Yeah.
like,
So a question that I have is, if you're in an environment where a person doesn't feel like it is safe to actually, speak how they're feeling, whatever that may be. Like, I think it would make sense in my limited perspective of the world, if people could say, I'm a pedophile, or if whatever the thing that's like socially super taboo, if you lived in a world where it's like, I can't help it, but I'm feeling this way. I'm a racist. I'm a whatever. This is what I'm feeling. Well, like, okay, well, we're in a place where, like, yeah, that's a thing. Like, it exists. It doesn't not exist. So let's create a space that we can actually have open dialogue and conversations. We can, like, breathe this out. And as opposed to being in a place that's just people are afraid to be canceled, not to even. I think I acknowledge, and actually, I think both are kind of correct. I kind of understand, like, the strong fist rioting, burn it down. Like, we've already asked enough times.
yeah.
Like, I get that perspective as well. I'm just I'm like evaluating, weighing it out in my mind.
Well, the good news is,
I'm not saying I'm a pedophile.
right.
But if I was, I'd want to be able to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
Maybe not on the podcast, but.
And how the hell do you even think about launching a book in this time? Like, what was it, mid-December that you launched?
Yeah, mid-December.
Right?
Yeah.
The Align Method?
Yeah.
And I mean, as your book gets traction, did any of this, whether it's the COVID virus or this injustice that took place and the murder of George Floyd and the protesting and then the rioters who took advantage of the protesting. And I want to make that clear. Like, I don't think the media just shows so much of the rioting and looting.
Yeah.
And
really small segment, sensational media.
Yeah.
Paid.
It's fucking bananas, man. And it's like so much of
they're run by predominantly white people.
What do you know?
So it's a very interesting thing.
Yeah. What do you know?
Yeah.
And yet the protesting that I believe should have gotten more of the spotlight didn't, because of the small handful of people rioting.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to zoom in on just the two buildings on fire and one getting smashed, the window smashed in, and easy to go like, oh, wow, there's a lot of riot. Now, I'm not saying a lot of rioting didn't happen. It did. But when you look at the amount of like, we had 3 protests here in Chino Hills, all very peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
All very peaceful. One was on a weekend, and then we had 2 more the following weekend, 2 days in a row. Very peaceful. Nothing burnt down. No one threw shit. Cops didn't even come out. It was just people got to, for those people, I guess, in Chino Hills and any probably small town who are living under a rock, those towns were made aware that, hey, there's this injustice still taking place. Yet I didn't see any news vans out here in Chino Hills all 3 times.
Yeah.
Capturing footage. But let me tell you, if someone threw a rock through the police department windshield or window, the media would have been out there talking about how even small towns are now rioting.
Yeah.
And that's how the narrative gets changed. So tell me about your book, The Align Method, and I'm curious on 2 sides, right? Because I'm a fitness guy and I want to learn more about your book and why you wrote it. But also, as an entrepreneur, I'm like, what a horrible time to launch a book. And how did this whole thing affect the launch of your book?
Yeah. Well, so one, like, final note before going into the book, we were mentioning before the amount of gratitude that I personally have for the world becoming more politically aware and socially aware.
Yeah.
And so I think pre-crisis of the corona and now the George Floyd and all the things, not just George Floyd, just all the inequality in general. My life, my focus, my focal point, kind of like news. Like in the news, you get a sliver of reality. So the sliver of the tunnel that I existed in was like, okay, like more, essentially. That was my sliver.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, how do I get more money? How do I get more social media stuff? How do I get more book sales? How do I need to grow this thing. We need an empire, and then like with this, I'm like, I don't even know if I give a shit about the empire. I'm like, what do I care? Like, what do I stand for in the world? And so
what did you figure out?
I'm still in process of it. I'm starting to reevaluate and because I think like the pieces have been lifted in a sense, like everything's kind of floating right now for some
Talk about your snow globe analogy. I don't think we were filming. By the way, if you guys are wondering who the hell is this BK Strength that B is sitting with, this is my dear friend Aaron Alexander and author of The Align Method, and also you still run the Align podcast.
Yeah.
And I've had the good fortune to be on the podcast, and I appreciate that opportunity. And you're just such an awesome human being, and I say that in a way of like I could almost just you could see who you are. You're a very transparent dude, and I appreciate you for that.
The same way.
And Aaron's just a really great cat, and he put out this book. And of course, anyone and anything that I believe in, I want to support and promote. And so here you are. But tell the audience your snow globe analogy of things being shaken up.
Well, I mean, I don't know that it's that profound. It's not, I don't think I'm going to write it down in a book or anything. But yeah, it just feels like presently in the world, I think many people were very in a place of complacence, you know, and you're just kind of cool. Like, this is it. You got to get, like, for me, it was the moreness. I was in the moreness, I think.
Sure.
You know, and I mask it in spirituality and meditation and introspection. And I read Rumi and like all these, I quote Alan Watts, you know, but a lot of that I think is some degree, if I really analyze it, some degree of like a facade.
Like a veil.
It's like a veil of sorts because I want something deeper.
Sure.
And I truly do. I think we all truly do.
What is the deeper thing you want?
Man, I'm in process on what that is exactly. I don't know that it is a specific thing. I think it's more of a sensation, you know, and like a sensation of like feeling connected, feeling
significance.
That's the old sensation, you know. So that's the place, and that gets in like kind of Tony Robbins type models of having the a lot of people, they mask an actual need for significance with things like, you know, community or giving back or whatever it may be.
Charitable contributions.
Yeah, all this different kind of deeper type actions. But I think if I'm honest with myself, yeah, there was definitely a blanket of that significance. And presently, because of what's happening, I feel like there's no other option other than, because the snow globe has been shaken up, to at least reevaluate, you know, and what actually really matters. You know, when you look around the world and it's like, yeah, fucking people are suffering, you know, and it's not just black people. Like the highest incidence of suicide is middle-aged white men, the people that are controlling the world. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's like suffering is ubiquitous. Like we can all align on suffering.
Suffering does not discriminate.
It does not discriminate, you know, and the discriminator, the oppressor, you know, we when you inflict pain on somebody, we have mirror neurons, and we activate those same systems inside of ourselves, you know, and we can temporarily see, oh, cool, like the quantity went up in my bank account or my whatever, you know, and I can kind of turn a blind eye because I can see that. But that visceral sensation of, I know I inflicted hurt out into the world, it's something that you can't unfeel, you know. And so I think that's what the deeper thing that if there's anything that I would be seeking, I think would just be like reparation of that sensation of a lack of wholeness. You know, and the wholeness isn't just my career being successful. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah.
So as you're writing this book, what was the catalyst to you saying, look, I got to write this book?
Yeah, thanks for bringing it to the book. I really appreciate you driving that. I'm like, we're not talking about the book. You're like, we need to sell some books.
One, you need to sell some books simply because it's a great book and it adds value to people's lives who are all fucked up. I mean, we're sitting more than ever. People are hunched over their phones. Like, you're seeing people going Neanderthal again simply by virtue of how we screen suck out of these fucking phones.
Yeah, well, so that's the redeeming quality that I'm seeing and reevaluating the work that I've been paying attention to for, you know, I started working with clients 16 years ago, and it's evolved into the chimera of all these different things that have come together now. You know, and so the thing that I'm seeing is still value, even in this moment, while the snow globe is all fluffy and lifted. When people feel unhealthy and when people feel collapsed in their structure, they end up, you even actually can see it affects the way that people purchase items. It affects the way that people's cortisol functions and their neurochemistry. And, when your posture is in a certain position, say hunched over, for example, in the forward head posture and the shoulders are rolled forward and your hands are clasping like little hawk claws and all that, it literally puts you into a place of protection. So it puts you, so now if you're having a conversation between two people and we're trying to create dialogue that actually creates meaningful change to go in and repair all those deep visceral things we were talking about before, but both people are coming from a deeply sympathetic, stressed out, contracted, conflicted state, what kind of results do you think you're going to have out of that conversation? You're probably just going to have a fist fight.
Yeah, it's like two angry people arguing.
Yeah.
Right? Like unless you calm back down and get some kind of emotional discipline, you're not going to be able to, even if the end of the argument is we agree to disagree, you're not going to even get to that.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm after, the last couple of weeks of kind of being pretty well lifted in the sense of feeling, no, that's not true. Last week, since pretty much getting back to LA, because I felt like I left for a month and I kind of took like a me trip where I was pretty disengaged from media in general.
Did you drive or fly?
I drove.
You drove to Oregon?
Yeah, it's 12 hours. Yeah.
Did you go straight through or did you sleep?
No, I stay at friends in the Bay Area.
Okay.
So it's not bad. It's like 6-hour drive up there. And then I listened to a bunch of audiobooks and all that stuff.
What did you listen to?
On this one I listened to, what was it? I think I was mostly podcasts on this one, actually. It wasn't a specific, I was listening to The Body. There's a book called The Body, and it just goes, it's like a super dorky book. It's dry for people if they're not really into it, but just gets really deep into like all the different systems of the body. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, honestly.
Dude, so how crazy, right? So you and you're right. Like your job is to understand that shit so that you can make it easy for us when you put it in your book. Like, and when you're working with clients who are paying you an obscene amount of money to work with them and make them feel whole and be whole. I get that. So there's all the intricacies of the human body and the human mind and the human chemistry and the dopamine hits that we get and the fight or flight mechanisms and all this. And then there's just like, oh my God, something bad happened. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to go out there and protest and try and figure it out, try and understand it. In the process, some dude started to throw fucking rocks. So I just got caught into the mob mentality and I'm throwing rocks into a building that I don't even know who's owned by whom. Now I'm asking for society to defund police and not even realizing what impact that might have. Like, then there's all the body chemistry going wacky like that.
Yeah.
Like, would you be able to explain what the fuck happens in a mob mentality?
Well, it's actually kind of, yeah. I've been pondering on it, and it's actually really interesting. Like, that is one of the healthiest things that the culture can do is literally like walk it out. So imagine if we have these two beings. We're just in this big marital relationship. You could call it's just a relationship with oneself, or you could say it's bipartisan, or you could say it's it's a relationship. However you view that, and we were talking before the Kubler-Ross model of healing grief, the stages of grief.
Yeah.
And so when you have a loss, and you could, I don't think it would be fair to put that loss on George Floyd. It's a much bigger issue than just one person, but in those models of grief, the stages, the first one is denial. And then after that, you get into this anger phase. I don't think this is a perfect overlay for what's happening right now, but it is interesting just to see the stages of humanity, and how, interesting. Like we're going through these cycles, and then the next one after that is dialogue, and then after that you go into depression, and then finally you go into acceptance, and so what we're in right now is we're in this anger phase where it's just like, you locked me up for 3 months, you're killing my people. It's like, whoa, it's pent up. And so you want to just explode, you want to express it out. And so naturally the healthiest thing that we could do if you were in that fight between each other, you say, you know what, Bedros, like, I know that you want to choke me out right now. And I know if I say anything to you, I'm going to regret it. I think we should walk it out. So we we
Yeah.
go outside,
Yeah.
and we take a walk, and then as you're walking, you're literally, it's kind of like you're naturally activating kind of like an EMDR therapy, like
Bilateral
therapy.
stimulation, right?
Yeah. So as you're walking, as you're going, right. Yeah, totally. So as
Yeah.
you're walking, you're going and you're navigating the world. You're looking over there, left and right, that lateral movement of the eyes, which helps to literally start to calm that sympathetic stressed out response. It allows you to start to process that trauma.
Is EMDR the mechanism in which then the left and right side of the brain begin to process shit?
I don't know enough about it to give a really excellent answer, so I don't want to bullshit you. I need to learn more about it.
A friend of mine, he is
Huberman?
What's that?
Andrew Huberman?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. He's
You should get Andrew Huberman's great. He's probably the world's leading expert on this conversation.
Really?
So I'd love to connect you guys. It's awesome.
Yeah. I would love that connection, but I'd love to understand. So my wife actually went through EMDR, and the lady would tap, sit across from her and start tapping one thigh, then the other, then the other, then the other, and have her start processing through unprocessed trauma. And I was telling this to my friend who's an FBI agent, and he's a fanatical road bike rider. Like, he'll ride 30, 40 miles in the morning before going to work. He currently deals with like the domestic terrorism that's taking place in the United States, mainly white supremacy, right? So just investigates that kind of stuff, clues things together, has informants that reach out to him, has to like connect dots, etc. And one day I was just, he was at our house, we're having a barbecue. He's my son's soccer coach on the weekends, and we're like shooting this shit. And I'm telling him about how the wife's going through EMDR and really loves that experience, and that when I worked with a therapist for 16 months, once a week, it took so long, but in like a month and a half, my wife's like just processed through so much trauma using EMDR. It just expedites the process and kind of wading through your shit and figuring things out. And he's like, dude, I think there's some level of like EMDR that takes place when I'm on the road bike and I'm pedaling and I'm looking around. And he goes, some of my best solves for cases come from there.
Yeah, I mean, it essentially sends the indication into your nervous system that you are processing the issue. So predator comes, tries to bite your head off. You're not just pinned down in this compressive, like you faint and you're just conked out. It's like, no, we're getting stuff done. So what your deeper mammalian reptilian self is saying is like, okay, cool, we're processing, we're making forward progress. And the other interesting thing that happens with people when they are just outside, other than all the obvious things of like getting vitamin D and all that, but from a visual perspective, when they're looking out into the distance, which now finally the culture over the last 3 months, we've just been stuck into the sensational media of coronavirus, just watching the ticker go up of, oh my God, another 1,000 people died. You're just staring into the screen like, oh, like that will freak your nervous system out. So when you're vigilantly focusing down, using that myopic vision to stare into a screen, it's sending another indication into that deeper mammalian self that says, okay, I'm hyper focused, executive function, get stuff done. Like, I need to get this done. I'm pulling the bow back and I'm looking down the line and I see the animal in the distance and I have all the cortisol and everything to concentrate. And that's a great position to be in temporarily. But now I let it go, and I need to walk, and I need to look out in the distance, and I need to, get out my binos and look out over and kind of see and take in the whole savanna. Maybe the old hunter-gatherer wouldn't have binos at that point, but he looks out over the distance, and that's a natural system that starts to calm the nervous system down. So the way that we use our eyes isn't just like I'm going to have visual issues in the literal sense of I can't see right because I'm always contracting my ciliary muscles to cause the lens to refract that light. So I'm always in this contracted state with those eye muscles when I'm looking into a book. another big part of why there's so many issues with myopia is a lack of sunlight. When you get sun exposure to your eyes, it literally sets off this whole cascade of chemicals that literally change the shape and the structure of your eyeball. And when you don't get that sunlight, you don't get that ingredient, it increases likelihood of myopia dramatically. But
what are the effects of myopia?
well, it's just nearsighted. You just can't. You
Right.
don't see right. You can only see close up. So you look out. You literally don't have. Which the metaphors are pretty endless on this.
Yeah.
You can't see the periphery. You can't take it all in.
That's what I was trying to get.
And so that gets in once again. It's like, oh, interesting. I'm seeing some connections of the way that I see with my literal eyes is kind of like the way that I perceive. It's like, oh, interesting. Well, maybe the way that I move and inhabit my body, that kind of impacts the way that I relate to the world. And so just the happenstance act, if it just so happens that when people get pissed off enough, they go outside and walk it out, that's like deep down mammalian hunter-gatherer. Our nervous systems are saying, I gotta wind down. And we're doing that.
But not people who do that most don't realize consciously that's what they're doing.
No.
Right?
No.
What made you try and figure out what's happening consciously to us? Like, you realize, I'm going to say this with all due love and respect, like, you're not normal. You know that. And that's why I really love you. It's like you, Sean Stevenson, Jay Ferrugia, like, you guys are dudes who, like, in your own zone of genius, when you say Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, who actually now is my physician for the last 2 years, because she's freaking awesome. And actually Jason Redman, who I introduced you to, introduced me to her, and I'm like, holy shit, I got to ditch my doctor and start working with her. But my point is, like, those of you in that area, you guys aren't normal in your zone of genius. You've just gone all in on this one area. Like, what makes you dig so deep and figure this stuff out?
I don't know. I think just curiosity. I think it's just, well, one thing that's been really helpful, I think, is actually having accountability. So I've noticed as, my platform's grown a bit and I've kind of like just had more people paying attention, I just don't want to be a dummy. And so I think that's a major thing. If it all comes, for me, it all comes back to people. I'm such a social creature. So if I don't have the accountability from other people, I end up kind of spinning out into, well, I wouldn't probably become like an obese person just macking down Twinkies or anything, but I wouldn't focus as much. Like the fear of rejection, I think, is a strong thing for me, and so that the urge to show up to the tribe with something meaningful and something valuable and something different. So if the tribe has 6,000 people doing pull-ups and bicep curls and teaching people hypertrophy training and bodybuilding and all that. And I'm like, okay, cool. You have lots of that version of fish. Like, you have all the fish you could possibly eat.
Yeah.
I'm seeing there's this other kind of version of seaweed over here that you guys don't have almost any of. In fact, there's like maybe a couple seaweed producers. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go and hunt seaweed. So I think that once again, it reverts back to the hunter-gatherer tribal stuff. It's like examining what do we have an abundance of? Cool, check. Because I started with personal training, and then it's been an evolution way more into, and I got into rolfing and I got into different forms of manual therapy and trying to understand better how to help people's bodies heal through contact, through touch. Yeah. And then that gets into, like, well, you can help bodies heal through words. You can help bodies heal through ideas. You can help people's bodies heal through starting to tinker with the identity structure. So there's the physical structure, but encapsulated within that is the identity structure.
Sure.
So that's kind of, I think, where I'm at.
How, I don't want to lead the witness on this one. I'll come back to that one when I find a better way to not lead you on this one. So let's go back to this. We talked about how, the human body is just raw, a whole bunch of cells and reactions and feelings and thoughts and emotions. And then I heard you say, well, and now look at how we're acting. We've all been cooped up for 11, 12 weeks. And then obviously the murder of George Floyd and the injustice that took place, we all go out there and we react no different. We react as a society no different than one human body would react. But then you said, as I live in my human body, do you believe Do you believe your body is a vehicle that you live in? Like, I guess, what's his name? The guy that wrote Power of Myth, Joseph Campbell.
Oh yeah, I love Joseph Campbell.
So Joseph Campbell, who wrote Power of Myth, he talks about, our body's just a vehicle, right? This is consciousness. The eyes are the window that the consciousness is looking through. Most people are human animals. It takes time to become a human being, to be aware of the human animal that lives within, that reacts on emotion and feelings, and etc. Like, is this a vehicle? Like, are you just consciousness living in this meat sack? Like, how do you see the body?
I used to be really defensive of the meat sack, and I like waver in and out of letting go of my defense from that, and being like, yeah, it really is beyond that. But I think it's just both. It's like yes and, chicken or the egg. It's like, I think that's the meat sack. It really is this temporary thing that we're gonna, it's like a rental.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna leave it. You don't own the house. And even in that, even if you think you own the house, the bank actually owns the house.
Right.
And so there's that perspective that regardless, I'm going to leave this thing. But then I think there's a reason that we have it. There's a reason that your physical body is, when you feel in alignment, you feel almost like in tune. You're able to pick up frequencies in a different way. So you're able to hear more subtle sounds of sorts. Mm-hmm. But when your body's in cacophony, then you're not able to pick up on so much stuff, because all you can pick up is this stuff, is the frequencies that are loud enough.
I've never heard of the word cacophony. Is that the opposite of alignment?
Cacophony just is like disorder. It's like an audible term,
okay,
like a sound term. So if something's cacophony, it's just reckless sounds and trumpets and guitars. Wow, it's cacophony. Yeah. So if your physical body is unintegrated, which is like a structural integration Rolfing type term.
Yeah.
If it's disconnected, the bridges are out, then information isn't able to pass, then your body ends up coming into a place where it's like, okay, well, we need to figure out how to get these bridges sorted out. So now you're in kind of like triage, biological triage with yourself, which biological triage is also mental emotional triage, because it's all the same package. So now your mind body is in a place of just figuring out how to survive, i.e., the majority of the United States. So if you look at it statistically.
Yeah. So how the hell did we get there in a country like the United States, that we're a superpower, we have the most amount of access to resources and information, yet we're so out of whack?
Well, I think the mold that we're in is such that it's challenging. If you took a goldfish and you put a goldfish into a pond or into a bowl, and inside of the bowl where there was a bunch of sludge and there wasn't enough space for the pond for the fish to swim around, and it got, you see this with like, what's the guy's name, Shamu. You see with whales and like in like SeaWorld and all that. They have it's called flaccid fin syndrome, and so their fin will just kind of flop over into this flaccid sideways way, as opposed to being this erect, strong, full power fin. Because it's within that container. Oof. So that container causes the biological structure / emotional, mental, all that, because it's all tied together.
But what's the container?
Collapse.
What's the container that we're experiencing in the United States?
I love these softballs. These are great. I know that you don't.
I'm really trying to understand. Really, like I feel like I'm the average. Like,
that's great.
Yeah, bro, I'm not as smart as I look.
I don't trust it. So the container is the shape of your office. The container is the shape of your car box. The container, like Tony Robbins, we referenced him before. He says, like, you eat food in a box, and then you go sit inside of the box, and then you get into the box and drive the box to your other box, and then you come back and you try to you finish the day with a cylinder to try to change your state. And it's like, we are in this rectangular box world that doesn't fit the shape of our actualized bodies. To use like another referencing, like self-actualization.
Yeah.
So or from like more of a physical therapy kind of like Western perspective, like a joint centrated position, like balanced, stacked on, like the integrity of the structure is awry. based off of the environmental conditions that we exist in. So every time you sit down in such a way, maybe not you, maybe not me, maybe not anybody that listens to this, but certainly if you look around, you'll start to see it. The chair will be in a position that you wouldn't want to deadlift from that position. You wouldn't want to pick up a heavy rock from that position. You wouldn't want to do really anything meaningful with your body at all from that position, because you'd be like, oh, that's unsafe. And so then you do that enough, and now all of a sudden the position that you formed your body based off of the mold that you exist in is an inherently dangerous form to be in. And now all of a sudden you say, oh, right, 80% of Americans experience chronic back pain in their lives, and, disc herniations are through the roof, and, diabetes, and, I think it's, 60% of Americans are obese? No, 40% of Americans are obese, and I think 35% are overweight. It's just like,
that is a ridiculous number, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. So you look, it's like, okay, what's the issue? It's like, okay, people need to be vegetarian or carnivore or like eat more kale. It's like, that's fine. That's a start. But what about the mold that the fish exists in? Like, what's the shape of the bowl that you exist in? And so something simple that you could do would be choose to do walking meetings. Crazy, revolutionary. It's like, cool, we all go around this boardroom and we sit there, and half of us are like checking our notifications on Instagram, like waiting for this meeting to be over. Why don't we all just as a team go take a walk? And like in our team, like if you want to take your shirt off because it's sunny, that's fine. Like Jimmy's taking his shoes off and walking on the grass, like that's cool. That's actually really good for Jimmy. That's going to make him a better employee in the company. Or maybe we throw a pull-up bar into the doorway.
It's so counterculture though, huh?
It's crazy.
I mean, what would a business do when an employee decides that, even if on their break, like I just imagine, we've got 42 people working at our headquarters for our franchise, and I see out the windows some of our team members together walk around, maybe on a lunch break or a whatever break.
Yeah.
But then I would be like, what the fuck? Like if they took their shirt off?
Yeah, it would turn into On It. Yeah,
right. It would exactly. It'd be our
like,
company.
It's just another stab at company culture. And you can even see within On It, like the internal, deeper in, it's still socially acceptable. But as you get deeper and deeper into the people running the numbers and all that stuff, it's just not their tendency, because they're not that type of people.
Right.
The person that is the guy that crunches the numbers typically isn't the guy that wants to wear like 5-finger shoes and climb trees.
Right.
And that's fine. Like everybody doesn't need to be that guy.
But is it fine? It's not, because that person's going to have a fucked up chair soon, sit in a cockeyed way, be vitamin D deficient.
Yeah, but that's, I don't personally have any agenda with any person. Like if someone, I think the best way to do a thing in my experience is just lead by example. And I'm just going to do the best that I possibly can with, me or the people that care to ask. And if somebody else has a way, I've learned enough times that I've been wrong, and I try to place my values on somebody, and then I find out later on, I was like, I think I was wrong the whole time. So now I come from more of a place of like, I'm my own experiment. So I'm just going to do my best to function as optimally inside of this experiment as I can. And if people ask questions, that's essentially like them signing the waiver.
Right. Now I can say something because you asked.
You signed the waiver.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll say as much as you'd like, but know that I might change my opinion in like a week.
Based on new information, et cetera.
Based on, the second then someone comes up with some information that I deem better than what I've got, I'm wide open to change it, I think.
Where do you get your information from?
Well, I do like a lot of audio books. Pretty much podcasts and audio books and people. Oh man, like we're so lucky, I would say, or we've arrived ourselves to be around people that we can connect with.
Sure.
That are world-leading experts of various different topics.
Give me a couple examples.
Holy shit. Well, like Andrew Huberman is a guy. So he's like a Stanford professor. He's like literally world's leading experts on the way that our visual structure affects, the way that we think and feel and our autonomic nervous system. And he's a friend that I could call up and say, hey, let's do lunch after this. Like, oh, we'll do a podcast. And now it's like, all right, well, now I have this accountability again because I think I crave validation. I don't want to show up and be like, oh man, I dropped the ball on that, because I don't want to be shunned by the tribe.
Sure.
So I want to show up to him.
Dude, how important is that for you? That you've kind of, this is your second time mentioning now, so I'm going to kind of dig deep into it.
Oh yeah.
Like, is validation and being accepted and getting approval by the tribe that important to you?
I think if I'm really honest and I really look at it deeply, if I looked at it superficially, fuck no. I'm a free spirit. I do what I want. I buck the man and authority and all that stuff. And that's true. Typically, as soon as you put up a rule or regulation, I'm gonna try and I'm at least question it a lot.
Yeah.
But I think beyond that, I've noticed it with the stuff happening now. Like, I feel like I don't want to offend people, which I think this is, I think it's things that I'm just in process of I think I'm in process with all that. But if I'm really honest with it, I think there is some deep sensations of wanting to be validated by the tribe, I would say, for sure.
Is that healthy? And I'm not being a wise guy.
I appreciate it. I think it's one of those things where I wouldn't be, materially speaking, at the place and like physically and all that, at the place that I've arrived to presently. Not that it's that grandiose or anything, but like, I'm healthy and I'm doing things that I love and, to feed myself, and
sure.
It's like, that's cool. Yeah. I think that there'd be a good chance that from that quantitative perspective, I wouldn't be doing as, the numbers wouldn't be as up. But I think perhaps from like a deeper, more back to like the visceral sense of being perspective, I think there probably could still be some work there of really feeling like fully autonomous. But I also feel like maybe it's actually completely okay to have that urge to be connected with the tribe and not want to be shunned by the tribe. Like, I don't know if you can get around that. Like, what do you feel for yourself?
Well, I suppose we can't get around it, because when you really think about it, we are tribal. We do feel safer in community, right?
Yeah.
I think about the caveman. If a pack of wolves came to his cave, his greatest chance of survival are that the other cavemen and women come out of their caves in defense of him. Yeah. And together as a united front, we confront the pack of wolves or the saber-toothed tigers who are trying to get us.
Yep.
By myself, I'm probably going to be fucked.
Yeah. You can go fast, but you won't go far.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And so I believe, therefore, to be part of the tribe must see value in me. So therefore, I must deliver some kind of validation to the tribe. I can't just be a value extractor. I've got to add value.
It needs to be balanced.
Going back to what you said, hey, look, everyone's fishing, bringing fish to the tribe. I only see 2 people bringing seaweed.
Yeah.
Maybe I can bring that.
Yeah.
More of that. But then I see this high level of validation seeking, approval seeking from people that they just go bananas. And I guess here's where I'm coming from. I look at my 14-year-old son and my 12-year-old daughter, who we've raised to be so independent, so confident, to make eye contact, to shake hands, to politely, respectfully question authority, their teachers. Like, why am I doing it that way? Yeah. Is there a better way to do this? What's the outcome of this going to be how's it going to benefit me when I'm older? Actually, my son got into a debate with his math teacher when he's like, why do I need to figure out right angles? Like, why do I need to figure out right angles? Like, there's Google that I can type that into and it'll tell me what I need to know. And quite honestly, I've decided I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to go the way of being a problem solver and getting money in exchange of solving these problems. And right angles can be solved by going to Google. And she was like, shit. And so her solution was, I'm going to call your mom and dad. So next thing you know, I'm sitting across from her going like,
he's a free thinker.
Yeah. Or I'm like,
out of school.
Wait, so why does he have to solve right angles again? It was like, so he can pass the class. Like, fuck, son, just figure it out. Right? Just figure it out. Jump through the hoop. But that same son and daughter that I've raised tell me about their friends who will post something on TikTok, and within minutes, 20, 30, 40 minutes, will pull it down based on the number of likes and comments they got.
Yeah.
And it will change how they feel
Yeah.
and how their worth, their self-worth, based on, like, where does that level of fucked up outside validation and approval come from?
Yeah.
And again, I'm asking, I want to know, because I do realize I need to
no.
contribute to the tribe
It's an important conversation, man.
in order for the tribe to come to my rescue if I need it, right? I can't just be an asshole and then one day my house is burning down. I'm like, bro, you got to come out and help me. You're like, fuck you, man.
Yeah.
I'm not going to come out and help you, right? Like,
Well, I think with anything, a hammer can build a house, or you can whack yourself over the head with it. So the need to be validated by the tribe and show up with something that we don't already have 6,000 of, like, thanks, Henry, like, cool, like, we have to throw that away now.
Yeah.
You know, you want to come up with, cool, like I did something, like I'm a part of the unit. You know, I think that's the hammer to build a house, you know, using your ingenuity and your intelligence and your resources to figure, like, how can I support? And it is because I want to be a part of the tribe. Like, that's it. But then beyond that, once it starts to become something where you're hitting yourself over the head, is where you're in that position where your thoughts are being manipulated, perhaps against your intuition, you know, or your like Romans would call it, your inner daemon, that inner voice that you have. So if you have that inner voice and something's coming through, that's probably going to be the magic. That's probably going to be the thing that is the change. You know, it's like you've got this gift. You know, wherever the hell that thing came, it's like it went through your little tuning mechanism of a body, and it's like, well, here we are.
Yep.
And then you go, and you twist it, and you turn it, and then you stuff it down, and you're saying, we'll just put that back. You know, so I think that's when it becomes really problematic. And then the other part where it would become problematic is when you're doing things specifically seeking validation in this case. That would be like, you know, what is it? I think it's probably the Bhagavad Gita, or one of those spiritual texts. They talk about renunciation being the most important, one of, like, the most important things that you can do is, you know, in renunciating your attachment to the outcome, essentially. You know, so if you can get to that point, which I'm in process with, because I'm still a bit outcome attached, as you're obviously, like, picking up.
Yeah.
But if you can get to that point where you really are just doing things because it's like, it just feels right. You know, like that, to me, I think, upon hearing myself now, I think I have some work with that.
So being outcome attached,
Yeah.
the journey is not as important to you as the destination, or are you trying to see more significance in the journey? Like, do you have to force yourself to experience the journey, or are you so outcome driven?
It's like everything's oscillating. You know, there's moments, and that's how I know. And that was the interesting thing, like going up to Oregon and just being consumed in, cool, I'm going to replace a sink today and replace a faucet. And we're going to redo some tile today, and I'm going to re-landscape the whole front yard. And we're going to plant fruit trees. Like, how many yards of mulch do we need? You know, like that to me was one of those really nice reminders. And I've for people in general now that have been, like, really, you know, perhaps maybe not complacent, but within their tunnel, you know, what's going on, and maybe it's like a stress tunnel. If you have the opportunity to create some space and put some mulch down or something, like whatever your metaphoric mulch is, lay some mulch. Like, the whole world could use some mulch right now.
The whole world could use some mulch right now.
You know, being in those moments where it's just like, man, like, it feels good. I'm out and I got my shirt off and it's sunny and I'm stepping back and I'm looking at the progress and I'm like, wow, like, it's like when you feel that, I think for me, there's like nothing, I don't know what else. To me, that's the path. Like, how do we get our lives as a unit, as a team? Because if my life is like that, but there's deep suffering happening in my neighbor's house, you know, that's where I kind of question, is like some of the spiritual bypassing stuff starts coming in, where it's like, okay, I'll just be this, like, holy spiritual white robe beacon of love and, serenity in my house. Meanwhile, there's like domestic violence happening over here and sirens happening over here. It's like maybe the spiritual thing to do at this point is to actually come out of my fucking spirit bubble, and see like, what, we need to take care of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, I continually kind of question myself of like, cool, I just want to be in that flow state. I just want to be in flow all the time. Like that sounds good. Right. It sounds really convenient. But I think there's also value in like getting your hands in the dirt and fucking, it's like, cool, we need this sucks. This hurts. There's like a deeply embedded splinter in my community, and I want to be all free love over here with my right hand, but my left hand is just bleeding out. It's like, okay, we need to do surgery. So I think it's, with everything, it's like an oscillation pattern back and forth.
That's interesting. You described that, and you actually helped me identify out of the blue this past weekend, and just to kind of set the scene. You saw the lumber in there and the wood and stuff. We're getting ready for the project, and we've got a dude named Mo, and Mo, between BK Strength, our corporate office where he came last time, and my house, Mo is our handyman who's pretty much full-time just working on shit. There's always light bulbs burning out and something breaking and a tree that needs to be replanted elsewhere. And instead of having Mo texting him and like, hey, here's some more things for your list come Monday, over the weekend I was just like changing plants out of pots, we have these string lights in the backyard. I was like finding out the burnt ones and changing those light bulbs. And as I'm doing, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing right now? Like, because I teach people, like, do the things that are in your zone of genius and outsource the other things that you can pay someone else to do.
Yeah.
Yet
makes sense. It's from an efficiency perspective, it makes sense, but it doesn't always make sense.
Bro, you nailed it. All I wanted to do was just get my hands dirty by taking out this giant bird of paradise out of this cracked pot, because it had just outgrown the pot, and the pot had cracked, and I just loved just chopping away at the roots until it was just big enough to fit into the new pot, and just getting dirty and lifting it up. And as I'm doing all this, and I look at the string lights, and there's 2 or 3 of them burnt out. And normally I just a text message to Mo, and Mo would do it on Monday. I'm like, I'm going to find where those lights are. I didn't even know where they were sold, bro. I went to like a fucking AutoZone, right? They're like, we don't sell that kind of lights, sir. We sell automotive lights. I'm like, check. So then I went to fucking Lowe's.
I literally haven't done this for a while.
Then I went to Lowe's. I'm like, I need one of these, right? So, they sell me 3 lights. But it just felt so good, and I realized this is what we were talking outside about, processing through all this shit. Yeah. That was me processing through this whole COVID virus thing and the injustice that took place and the rioting and the looting and the protesting and where do I fall in line with any of this and all of this, and am I really being controlled by the politicians? All these thoughts that had been racing through my mind the last 12 weeks. Over the weekend, I started finally starting to process, and as I said 2 days ago, on Tuesday, maybe 3 days ago, today's Thursday. So Tuesday, Jay Ferrugia was here, and we worked out and then just sat there in the lobby and just started eating and talking. Like, we didn't solve the world's problems, but it just felt so good to talk through it with someone like this. And I realized I wish we had the cameras rolling then too.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't figure shit out. Like, you don't solve the world's problems, but you just figure yourself out. Like, It's like, I know what I was doing. If I didn't get in the pot and the giant bird of paradise and the light bulbs over the weekend, that was like a little release valve for all this pressure and tension that was building up inside me. Yeah. I might have snapped at the wife or the kids or a team member, or just done something that I would have regretted. Yeah. Because I do have some vices by way of taking more Vicodin and NyQuil at the same time that I should.
Yes, suppression.
So it was pretty.
And sometimes you need suppression. Like, I don't want to suppression shame, because that's like, there's some times where it's
really.
Like, yeah.
Honestly,
I don't
help me understand.
One right way to do things, and like a lot of the healthiest, most athletic people in the world, they drink beer. Yeah. Like a lot of cultures, they run on beer, and they aren't necessarily like violent, aggressive alcoholics. Sure. It's just a part of their culture, so it's very easy to be in the granola kale smoothie culture and just be like peace and love and like this is the only way. It's like, it's not the only way, and I think that there are moments where it's like prescription medication. I think that there's a time and a place for prescription medication. It's a bummer in the United States. It's like 60% of the population. No, it's not 60%. It's over 50%. Fact check, but it's over 50% of the U.S. population is on some type of prescription drug. I think that it doesn't need to be over 1 out of 2. But in general, there's certain moments where having that acute surgery for the thing is like that's exactly what we needed. We needed to put the fire out.
Yeah.
If we don't get that fire out right now, it's going to burn the whole place up.
Good point.
And so I think it's having all of those things. Like I like to have all the tools. So I'd rather have a fridge full of all the different tools and have responsibility and awareness how to use them all, as opposed to complete dependence on any one thing.
What is your method of suppression?
How do I suppress?
Suppress.
Yeah, if the fire's going crazy, cannabis is helpful. Yeah, that's the one thing that I've noticed in my life.
You smoke it or eat it?
I don't like eating it. And when I eat it, you don't know what's going to happen. I'm not sure. But with smoking it, I felt that's something that I've noticed in my life many a time. One of the things is feeling some kind of like, so this hasn't been the case for quite a while, which is convenient. I was going to say thankfully, but it's not thankful. It just is. But feeling like lonely, so feeling really just disconnected and just feeling just like deep, like alone. And I was like, I don't like this, and so I was just like, I don't know how to get out of this. I'll take a walk and it's pretty alone. I'll call somebody and it doesn't feel right. But then I would smoke some cannabis and all of a sudden that aloneness becomes like amazing.
Could some argue that you're just putting yourself in an altered state?
I would disagree. Yeah, I think it's just you're just.
Are you accessing?
I would say you're always on drugs. There's like that T-shirt, with the baby. I think it's from the Nirvana album. It's like, I don't do drugs, I am drugs.
Yeah.
It's like, if you think you don't do drugs, like you're just not paying attention. Like drugs are in your food. There's the obvious ones. If you're eating, meat from America, you're juicing yourself up with all sorts of antibiotics, and you're eating vegetables, you're getting pesticides. Like drugs are everywhere. If you're in an air-conditioned place, you're getting, anytime you breathe, you're taking in chemicals. So to have the autonomy to choose your chemicals, and live in a culture where we can, it comes back to like the pedophile thing and the racist thing. It's like, if you have a feeling, if something exists, let's talk about it. If it's like, as opposed to saying, oh, that's not okay, not accepted, put it down. And now you see our approach to drugs, which I think that comes into like the whole Nixon administration, the war on drugs, and that was more to like silence people, and probably harks back to like the slavery stuff, putting black people away for heroin and putting protesters and white people away for weed, so it gets into the whole political thing. But I think that, respecting all of the different tools and being willing to have open dialogue, and even if it's going to be like a really challenging conversation, I think the more that a person can do that, I kind of got sideways on this. I don't think I ever had a point. But the more that a person can do that, the less likely they are for some cancerous kind of clot to manifest itself.
Yeah.
So kind of letting it breathe. But so with the cannabis thing for me, winding back to have some semblance of like a point. I don't think there is actually a point, but it was.
Well, I was asking what do you use for suppression for yourself?
Well, the thing is like, is that an okay thing? I think that the cannabis, it's like a temporary changing of the channel.
Yeah.
But I think too often the belief is that channel that you were in, that was like, okay, that one was okay, because all you had was terrible food and toxic relationships and sitting inside of an apartment all day without being able to exercise your eyes or get any movement or, all of that. That stuff's fine because we haven't deemed those things as being unacceptable or socially taboo. But the second that you put something, this plant that the culture has deemed to be off limits,
right,
you put that into your system, it creates a subtle state change. We're like, whoa.
Yeah.
You mean you enjoy drawing all of a sudden as opposed to feeling alone and streaming through your Instagram feed? Unacceptable.
It's a
You
very
want to
valid
write your
point.
thoughts? No, no, no. You want to take a run? It's 9 p.m., sir. You can't take a run right now.
What do you think happens to you when you're using cannabis and you start getting that creativity? You went from alone, and one thing. Let me back up.
Yeah, yeah.
Kevin, my therapist, session one of, remember, 16 weeks every Monday. I worked with him for 16 weeks every Monday. I'm sorry, 16 months every Monday. Session one, he's like, let me teach you about HALT. I was like, HALT. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And when you said lonely, that is a state. Like when you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, that is when you're most likely to go back to self-destruction. Like the alcoholic is most likely to go back to the bottle, not to just change a state, but to like really fuck up their lives. The person's most likely to go to, pornography and just like go all in all night, whatever. And it's like if you manage and control your hungry, lonely, angry, tired by figuring out what do I need to do if I'm hungry, just get up and eat instead of saying I'm going to finish all my emails. And then by this point, you're in such a state that now you're going to take in 5,000 calories instead of just a balanced meal. If you're lonely, stop and make that call, put that text out. But as you talk about that, I don't know, that's kind of strange. I don't want to call someone right now. It might be a little too late. Then you smoke some weed. You're like, hey, I'm just fine. I'm in this place where I want to draw. I want to be creative. Fuck it. It's 9:30 p.m. I'll go on a run. What happens? Like, what part of your brain is accessed or released, or what the fuck happens that you're able to go from feeling lonely one moment to, you know what, this is all right?
Yeah. I wish I could break down like a really scientific breakdown of exactly what happens with the cannabinoids.
Well, what do you
systems,
feel? What do you
THC and all that
experience?
stuff. Well, this is one of those moments of asking like, why do you give a damn to do this research? This moment is that.
Okay.
Because this is like a topic that I have a cursory awareness of, but again, like I don't want to bullshit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, now I need to deep dive into the cannabinoid system. Thank you very much, Bedros.
Okay.
But I think it's like, I think you at any moment a person has the ability to transition from change their filter on the world. We just have this. Your filters are habitual; they're practiced. So I continually choose to see the world in this way. In the loneliness example, I practice, which could be childhood stuff, could be whatever, but somehow it's been habituated. It could be my parent, it could be ancestry.
Sure.
But the practice is in the line.
Yeah.
To see the world as, being alone is an indication, coming back to maybe like the tribal validation thing, for example.
Sure.
So, okay, cool, I'm alone. What does this mean? I put that filter on it.
Yeah.
And you have all the running stories.
Yeah.
So you're not actually in the moment of what the hell's going on. You're not honest with yourself.
Right, because if you're feeling alone, then you're like, oh my God, did I get exiled? Because I like to be tribal. I want to be adding value to the tribe. And if I feel alone, is it a feeling of feeling exiled from the tribe? I mean,
Perhaps
I don't know.
so.
Yeah.
It could be a different story for every person.
Yeah.
And so I think one approach is to talk out those stories and communicate with somebody like you, where it seems like you seem like you're like a very intuitive person, and you're able to kind of pick up on stuff and kind of open doors and such. So that's, I think, is one really helpful way, is to re-navigate those stories. But there's something interesting that happens with, and I'm not like a super huge proponent of cannabis or mushrooms or anything. I think they're some of the most powerful tools that we have, and they need to be deeply respected and researched and have facilities where it's like, here's that tool, God tool, essentially. Like we've got a whole branch for the God tools, in the government, which that's MK Ultra. Like we did have a branch for the God tools.
Yeah, we did.
And we probably still do. But, within that, there's something about those God tools, cannabis or ayahuasca or psilocybin, whatever, that they do exactly what's happening culturally right now. They shake the snow globe, so you were in this complacent place. All the snow was down, and okay, this is the shape of the town, and the shape of my town is, statistically in the United States, there's a lot of depression. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of all of these. There's a lot of happiness. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of things. what is Mark Twain has a quote. He said there's lies, damn lies, and then there's statistics. So I'm always suspicious of statistics that I regurgitate on podcasts. But we can get in these habitual ruts and these patterns, and then we happen to have some of these tools, which are called breath work. They're called maybe going for a run, which is breath work. There's exercising. There's whatever, moving your body, dancing. I'm gonna put some music, just dance, just wiggle it out. And there's also these plant tools. It's just one of the tools.
Gotcha.
And so sometimes, kind of like the people that represent kind of like what a lot of people would consider like the annoying hippie perspective, which hopefully I probably flirt with, but hopefully I'm not like too deeply entrenched in that side. They're super gung-ho. Everybody's got to get high, and you got to, it's like they got the cannabis hat and the shirt, and they're like pushing it in your face. And I don't think that's true. It's just one of the tools that really it's had some impact on that person, and they're excited to share it.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of more of an advocate for like all of the spokes of the wheel. I'm like, well, God tool, that's a pretty awesome spoke. And then, running tool, another good spoke, relationships, business, it's all a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. 5 daily movements to align your body.
Yeah.
So let's go from cannabis and maybe to actual movement for a moment. What are those 5 daily movements?
We broke the book down into 5 movement principles. There's 4 sections in total. The first one gets into the first chapter is called posture and personality, and so it's kind of what we've already touched on in a way, the way that our physical body affects the way that we think and the way that we feel, and actually giving people the roadmap on how they can start to take control of that and starting to give definition and awareness to that. Then it gets into the power of play and what that means and all that, and then in one of the sections is the 5 movement principles that we break down, essentially giving people something that's digestible and easy and accessible that anybody's able to do. Publishers love that, and they actually are meaningful. The first one that would be relevant for people to tinker with is just spending time taking your hips below 90 degrees, i.e. like spending any degree of time on the ground throughout the day. So while you're checking your emails, or maybe while you're, eating lunch or whatever, you could make the conscious decision at first. For some people, it might not be, might already be a part of your life, but, get some floor cushions, get like a comfy rug at your house, have a space in your home that it makes sense. It's inviting for you to take your body through that full range of motion, which is a part of your evolution.
Sure.
Like the moment that you leave getting up and down off of the ground, which, we've kind of started to veer away from that ever since like the royalty of chairs in Egypt.
Yep.
It's like, I'm up on that chair. This isn't Bedros and I must be important. We're in a chair. It's like, okay, well, if we were on the ground, we'd just be peasants, plebeians.
Right. Is that funny how that is?
Yeah. And then the peasants stay healthy and the king gets sick.
Yeah.
And so something as simple as that is just getting down on the ground. Like it does lots of things. One, it's really helpful with circulation. So as I'm doing this the whole time, I'm kind of like moving my legs, and you can see me kind of like pumping my legs, which if you've ever been in a hospital in a situation where you have to lay down for a long time, they'll put little like calf pumps to keep that circulation going. I haven't had that, but so that circulation naturally happens just by bringing your legs closer to your heart. So by you spending time on the ground, it's actually better for digestion, among like lots of things. But if that blood is closer to your vital organs, you have more of it to be able to heal and restore those organs and be able to process your food.
Gotcha.
Why we've eaten on the ground since the beginning of forever. So we've diverted away from all of these things that are our inherent humanity. We've kind of veered off because, this makes me seem successful or makes it more convenient. But all of those conveniences, which comes back into the perils of efficiency. And I think what's the restaurateur? I think it's Momofuku, I think is a restaurant in New York. It's a popular one. I think I might be missaying that. But he says something along the lines of doing things the long, hard, stupid way. And so it's like I've heard certain chefs, just grueling over making every piece of pasta perfect and all that stuff. Is like, that is stupid. get a bag of pasta and throw it in the thing, and like you got food. It's like no, we're gonna go over every single last little bit of it. You know, we're gonna do the traditional way, and then you get the plate, and you're like, oh, this is different. Like this, there's no comparison between the packaged bullshit and the person that did things in this case, like the inefficient way. You know, and then the irony with most of the physical stuff is the inefficient way is actually the efficient way, and that like you spending time on the ground, it opens up space at your house. Your kids start playing with each other. You know, it's a cool vibe having like floor cushions, and you know, and then all of a sudden people come into your place, and it changes the environment. You know, when you sit down with your family, with your girlfriend, with whoever, and go to an Ethiopian restaurant or something like that, or Japanese restaurant, it's like it changes everything. You know, by you making that subtle environmental change, you're like, I feel more playful. Like this is weird. You know, now now you think a little bit differently. You know, and then if you can invoke some of that play into your life, there's a whole chapter in the book of the value of play. You know, that starts to literally heal your nervous system. So if your nervous system is stuck in more of that fight, flight, kind of sympathetic type place, having that social engagement and connection in the form of kind of spontaneous creative play, that's like the top of the movement hierarchy. If you can throw some music in there maybe, and now you're integrating your movement to music. Now another person, oh my God, martial arts stuff or dance or whatever, you know, and now maybe we change the variables of the ground. Maybe we're outside. Oh, I have to not pay attention to the ground. It's this, whoa, you have this whole lightning storm of activity in your whole entire, you know, mind, body, everything, as opposed to the common efficient model of, you know, I'll get the Bowflex or whatever and I'll lay down. Yeah. You know, so I sat in the toilet at 90 degrees, which crimps up my rectum. It keeps me from actually being able to get a full defecation.
The squatty potty, right?
The squatty potty, exactly. You know, and then I went from the chair in that same position, hunched over, like practicing a disc herniation essentially. You know, and then I get my bed that's raised up, so I never get to that full range of motion. And then I sit back down on the Bowflex, I lay down, and I get a couple presses out. It's like, what are we doing, people?
Yeah. Isn't it funny? In the name of efficiency and evolution, we've begun to damage our most primitively natural states. Yeah. And again, I'm fortunate to have, you know, guys like you that I follow, that I learn from, and like I said, Sean Stevenson and Gabrielle Lyons and Jay Ferrugia and Luca, and as I watch and learn, I'm like, wait a minute. And so one rule we set in our house is, you know, I got two kids, 14 and 12, and the moment we were starting to play board games and card games, etc., we're going to play on the ground. We're going to play on the ground and not at a kitchen table, because I literally would feel my state change. Because at my office, as the CEO of a big franchise, I'm sitting at a desk making decisions. Yep. I don't want to be in that state around my kids, because that state also reminds me to be tense, to be on guard, to have to make fast decisions that aren't necessarily playful, that require a lot of money and Federal Trade Commission and different states and how they regulate franchises. I don't want to be in that state. So to me at first it was like, I don't want to be in that same position playing board games with my kids, because I'm going to be in this position.
Yeah, you habituate yourself to that thought.
Yeah.
You know, so that's like you've anchored yourself, which is an NLP term, to when the formation of my body is in this position, it's turns on that channel. You know, and so once again, there's nothing wrong with that channel. It's a great channel. It's one of the channels.
One of the channels, you know? Exactly.
So then the other channel, if you were all, you know, just playful, lay on your back and do happy baby while you're making like business deals with the people, like that may be like, okay, a little far, like not the appropriate channel for right now, Bedros. You know, like maybe we need you up in the chair and kind of being like, get your shoulders back and like make some decisions. You know, so it's being able to, a healthy body is able to oscillate between those different channels with ease and fluidity. Yeah. That's the difference between a really badass martial artist or dancer and somebody that's just starting to pick it up.
Yeah.
So you look at like Conor McGregor being an obvious example, where he's really enamored by taking on various different languages of movement or dogma practices, and he's saying, okay, well, Bruce Lee was similar in that way. It's like whatever the previous dogma was, I see that, okay, cool, you went down A Street and then left on 2nd Street and then down B Street and then left on. It's like, I think there's a way for me to kind of do like a little kickflip move and like jump over the building.
Mm-hmm.
Like I see it. I know that the old paradigm says I'm not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
I think I can just jump it. And you're like, okay, no one's ever said that before. Like you're willing to try. It's like, yeah, I think I could try it. And so that's the person that's like, they can think on the fly because they're not so habituated and ingrained in those ruts. But from a physical perspective, if you're continually practicing the same repetitious patterns over and over again, based off of maybe it's not even a training thing, like you're always training, your life is just repetitive. So for you to incorporate some kind of screwball in there that turns things up and shakes the snow globe up, that gives you the potential to start to make another decision.
Yeah. Going back to what you said earlier about the pattern interrupt, and when I come here in the mornings and I play Disturbed or Papa Roach or whatever, like some kind of loud, angry music that's going to put me in a different state in my gym to work out. Yeah. When I leave here, I'm usually listening to a podcast on my way to HQ to put myself in a different state. When I get home and we eat and we're on the ground, these days actually my son's teaching us, the whole family, how to play 3-card. Is it 3-card poker? Is there a 3-card poker?
I don't know. I just know Hold'em.
Yeah, so I guess like a 3-card poker, and he's teaching us how to play it. So we play that on the ground now instead of board games like Monopoly. And we've got this giant dog. Her name is Cookie. She's part Mastiff, part German Shepherd. She'll come and lay. And I found that when I rest my head on her, I feel better. Mm-hmm. And that intuitiveness that you said that I have, I think that's been my greatest gift. That, and of course having access to guys like you, guys and gals who are like, okay, like Sean, I till this day I still don't know why I need to drink 30 ounces of water every morning. It's just I wake up and I drink 30 ounces of water because Sean Stevenson told me to, and I know I feel better. I feel better. I'm guessing it's because you're exhaling, you're breathing, you're dehydrating all night, and so I need to replenish that water because my brain needs a lot of water to think. Yeah. I'm assuming it's that, but I've yet to text him and ask him.
Throw some salt in it as well.
I will. See, now I will. And when I trust someone, right? But I realized very quickly that, okay, while I'm playing this 3-card poker that my son's teaching me on the ground, Cookie came and laid next to me and just went and just relaxed. And I just kind of scooched and laid on her. I'm like, shit, that feels good. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I need to be connected to an animal. Well, but I imagine there's a reason.
There's a ton of things. There's a whole chapter in the book about touch as well. And then also there's another chapter about breath, so nose breathing in particular. So you exhibited both of those things in there. As you went, that you essentially showed the dog exhaling. So you went, yeah. So if people are stressed out right now, something that they can do, and you might not even realize that you're stressed out because it's just a habituated state. Like, I'm just normal. Yeah. You're like, you've been stressed for 20 years.
Holy fuck. Yeah. That's a sad state. Yeah, there are people in that
like
state.
You're either bridging or already crossed the bridge of adrenal fatigue and you don't even realize it. Yeah. So something that would be helpful would be to just play with, as you're taking a walk, maybe just notice having a little bit longer exhalation. And so as you're exhaling, literally what you accidentally did with your dog. Mm-hmm. Like you're just seeing it's like, oh yeah, that's what we do. Yeah. Like that's literally your nervous system winding down, decompressing. So when you're breathing in, if you get scared, you go, so that's fight, flight, ready to go. Great state to be in. Not the best place to just perpetually stay in.
Yeah, to stay in.
When you finally realize like, the business isn't going to get jacked up from COVID or whatever, you go, oh, wow, that was a close one. Yeah. And so you can start to tap into that, which is what all of there's a lot of press around different breathwork practices and stuff these days. So we get Wim Hof reviewed the breathing chapter in here, as well as another guy called Patrick McEwen, who they have kind of like contrary perspectives, which is great, which I enjoy bringing everybody together.
Sure.
So the Wim perspective of that, the kind of hyperventilating, like heavy breathing type thing. That's a super, super excellent pattern interrupt. It's like a nervous system reset in a way, but it's stimulating. Because think of when you go up to the top of a mountain and you're up 20,000 feet elevation and there's not a lot of air and you have to like that's what you're replicating. And so another one that would be more of like the calming side of the nervous system would be, oh, that sounds like something you hear in like a temple. Oh, crazy. Interesting. So you're seeing all these scientific modern day overlays over things that have been happening forever and ever.
Yeah. hundreds of years. How crazy is that? Dude, so I got to tell you, as we wrap this up, 5 movement principles for a stronger body, sharper mind, and stress-proof life. And our society needs this more than ever. But as we wrap this up, I can tell you one other thing that has helped me really align myself is just the wisdom through time passing. Like, I wouldn't be as like if I met you in I'm 45 now. If I met you at 35 and you're like, hey, B, I want you to breathe this way. And I'd be like, are you fucking bananas? I'm not going to do that on the microphone in front of the camera. Now, if you're like, dude, take your pants off and do that, I would do it. Like I wouldn't. It's laughing.
It only works if your pants are off.
Yeah. I breathe better when my pants are off, mainly around my ankles.
It's in the book, yeah.
But you know what I mean? So there's so much self-awareness, confidence. I don't know what the word is. Self-actualization that comes to you as you get some wisdom under your belt, and maybe you run out of fucks. You just don't care what other people think. You just realize, like, as soon as my head touched Cookie's body, like, I love her up and I rub her belly, but when I'm laying there with my family playing cards and my head touched her body, I was like, oh shit, that feels good. I'm supposed to be in contact with an animal. I bet you some caveman somewhere had a fucking saber-toothed tiger he trained, and he fucking slept next to that saber-toothed tiger, and that tiger's fucking fur and his skin touching did something good for him. Like, I don't know if it did, but I felt something magical happen when I laid on Cookie. And I was like, I'm going to do more of this. And now she just comes and tucks herself underneath my head at night when we're, hanging out on the carpet in the TV room. And it's just a fucking good feeling. I feel some kind of stress relief, some kind of connection with human and animal. Yeah. Like, we're not that different, you and I, Mr. Dog.
No. Yeah. So there's it feels like we're wrapping up, so I'll refrain from going like too deep into it, but there's endless mountains of research of the value of touch for the human body, for anybody.
Yeah.
And a lot. So we have a whole chapter in the book about it. And one of the things when you see babies that are like preemies, and so they have to go into the incubation tubes, and they can't be touched and all that stuff, and bacteria and all the concern. The babies that they started adding in just a little bit of massage each day just to have a little bit of contact. All of a sudden those babies end up shooting up, and they start growing, they put on weight, they get out of the incubator way sooner. So there's touch is literally a nutrient. So if you think of like what do nutrients do? So like if I eat a hoagie, it goes in my belly and my intestines and ends up in my muscles somehow.
Yeah.
It makes me stronger. It's like touch is information that tells you, this comes back to the same stuff before, that this is obviously hypothetical, the exact reasoning, but likely it tells you that you're being supported. It tells you that you are connected. It tells you that you're safe. It tells you that you're loved by the tribe. So
all necessary things.
All necessary things for your health and your wellness, which is why, having prejudice and all the social injustice stuff is a real bummer, because it really puts a hurting on both parties, because it hurts to be prejudiced, because it feels better to give people stuff than it is to make something, or to like make money. It feels better to give money away.
Yeah.
So that's tied in. Like the fabric it's inextricable. Like we are tied together.
Yeah.
And so when you are communicating to somebody, you could say, hey, like I got you a new phone, like I love you. It's like, okay, cool. There's a lot of people that have that relationship with their kids or whoever. And, and it's the quantity goes up, and so you're like, okay, well, cool. At least I got some money, but the difference between that home and the home where they have that connected, loving, empathetic touch, like I love you, without any of I know we don't have a lot, but like we have each other. That's like, that's like bedrock, and so that human contact, human touch, It's literally a foundational nutrient, and we're living in a culture now, presently more than ever. It was already happening before, where now it's illegal to touch. Damn. So now,
Crazy.
So now it's
The
like,
things we needed most, which was touch, right?
Yeah.
Social interaction, and vitamin D, access to the sun.
Yeah.
We were told it's illegal.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Because we need to
How counterintuitive.
protect from a thing that our immune systems have been doing for millions of years. And I don't know, I'm not an expert on, I'm not a virologist or an epidemiologist or whatever, but I am enamored.
But you're a common senseologist.
I am enamored by the immune system.
Yeah.
And what the immune system likes is it likes adaptation, and it likes sunlight, and it likes exercise, and it likes movement, and it likes connection, and it likes feeling safe. Like the immune system isn't a separate system than anything. Like you're just a system of systems. Like you are a system. And so if you affect any part of your unus, it affects every other part of your unus.
Right.
So
the word system.
Yeah. And so it's like the things that it would be wise for people to really be thinking about, and ideally coming from the top down, would be, yes, take necessary precautions. We don't know what this thing is. Now it seems kind of like we do, but again, I'm not the boss of that, but we also, really focus on your health. Really focus on your community. Okay, cool. Like right now, maybe for the first, whatever the rules are, a couple weeks, month, quarantine means 40, so maybe 40 days, which just seems, whatever. We're going to limit this, but I really want you guys to focus on community. I want you guys focused on making meetup digital groups. I want you guys need to stay connected. You need to feel like you're on purpose. Okay, cool. You can't work, but like, here's things that you can do, because it feeds your biology to feel like you have a purpose. So just telling the whole world, say like, okay, don't do anything, don't touch anything, that's asking for a stalled immune system.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
That's one way. So how do we get the book? What's the best way to get our hot little hands on this book here?
I think bookstores, Amazon, wherever people get books.
Bookstores are shut.
Oh, good point.
Fucking bookstores are shut, bro. The corona.
Do they open again? They should be opening soon.
Pretty soon, I'm sure.
I think stores.
But I think Amazon's your best bet.
Amazon's the best bet. Yeah. Where are people?
You have an audiobook of it?
Yeah. I read the whole book.
Okay.
What a fascinating experience. Did you read your audiobook?
Yeah, and I had a whole issue with that because English being a second language for me. What is it about? Maybe the 4th, 5th grade when teacher makes you read like a couple of paragraphs from each page, and the next kid and the next kid. Yeah. And whenever I had to read out loud, I just started to stumble over my own words, and so I literally regressed back to that at the age of my book came out 2 years ago, so at the age of 43, it took me 2 extra days in the studio to get my rhythm.
Wow.
Now you, on the other hand, I bet you just breezed right through this.
No, it was challenging.
Was
Because
it?
you can hear the sound equipment's so much better, like in the podcast world. Yeah. There's just like every little slap of your lips or swallow or like anything. I was just like, oh, like I'm a disgusting animal. Like I don't want to hear this.
What's the matter with me? I'm filthy. I'm sick.
Horrible.
Yeah.
So it was but it was very interesting to learn about enunciation and be really focusing on each word, because it would be literally, as you already know, you could be stopping at a word over and over again, or a sentence, or like I just cannot. And then you get to the end of the day and you start getting tired and like, I can't formulate a sentence. Yeah. It's a very interesting experience. But I overall, it was a rewarding experience. I enjoyed reading the audiobook.
Oh, that was your first time?
Yeah, that was the first time, yeah.
An audiobook and write. Well, have you written another book?
No, that's the first book.
First book. Well, good. All right, so friends, you guys are going to find this on Amazon. You're going to find it on Audible. And, of course, as bookstores are opening all around you, you're going to find it in bookstores. And what is the best way for our friends to connect with you?
Everything's Align Podcast. So Instagram's where I'm most active. Okay. And then host the Align Podcast, which if I'm allowed to, I'd probably repost this episode, or I'd love to have you back on mine or whatever.
Actually, I'm going to give you this episode, and
great.
Feel free to repost it, edit it as you want.
Cool.
And guys and gals, you got to listen to the Align Podcast, because there's a handful of people that I really implicitly trust your guidance and their guidance, and you're one of those people. And it's not because It's not like we know each other that well. Like I met you, I don't know, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and it's just one of those things where like, dude, this guy in his zone of genius, he's really got his shit together. Like you reach out to me about, hey man, what do I do about my business? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can help you fix it and straighten it out and make it thrive. Ask me about all this shit and I wouldn't know. And so, right, that's why I've got you here. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to come out here, man. I know it's a bit of a drive.
You, man. Thank you so much.
All right, friends, thank you so much for watching this episode of the BK Strength Show. As always, strength isn't just physical, it's mental, emotional, spiritual, and of course, in mindset. And if this episode added value to your life, leave us an awesome comment. Make sure to follow us on all the different platforms. And as always, go and dominate your days. We'll see you.